Hello and welcome to the KPI Institute's webinar, Employee Engagement, the Key to Driving Performance. My name is Andrei Kostia and I will be your host for today along with our presenters, Cristina Tărâță from the KPI Institute and Sue Green and Mark Stewart from KPI Soft. This webinar is part of a series of free educational materials that aim to enhance the knowledge and know-how of those interested, while also creating a bridge between our companies and you, our public. The KPI Institute is a research organization specialized in business performance. It operates research programs in 12 practice domains, each linked to a certification course ranging from strategy and KPIs to employee performance, and from customer service to innovation performance. Insights are disseminated through a variety of publications, subscription services, and through a knowledge platform available to registered members. KPI Soft is a cloud-based software solutions provider that brings your analytics, performance management data, and external data sources together in one intuitive platform, seamlessly integrating critical business performance data with organizational scorecards. KPI Soft software connects organizational strategy to employee performance management and business reporting dashboards. Today's webinar will focus on the impact that an increased employee engagement level will have on your workplace, and it will be delivered by Cristina Tărâță, Sue Green, and Mark Stewart. Cristina Tărâță, the KPI Institute's head of research department, who aside from her involvement in primary research studies is also a performance management consultant who has supported organizations from various industries to cascade their performance management system to the employee level. Sue Green, KPI Soft Director of Customer Success, has over 20 years of experience as an HR practitioner. She holds the following certifications: SPHR SCP through the HR Certification Institute and Six Sigma Green Belt DFSS. Mark Stewart, KPI Soft's VP of Sales, North America Division, with 11 years of experience in business consulting, has worked in sales and marketing for small entrepreneurial software companies as well as Fortune 500 companies. This presentation lasts for approximately 30 to 45 minutes. We invite you to address any questions you might have during the course of our presentation. Our presenters will answer them either at the end of the presentation or by email as soon as possible. Now, enjoy the KPI Institute's Employee Engagement, the Key to Driving Performance webinar. I would like to invite our presenters to begin their presentation.
Good day, everyone. This is Sue Green with KPI Soft. I hope you're all doing well today. In today's presentation, you will get information on traits of a high performer, the ROI of highly engaged employees, how to align individual contributions to business KPIs, ideas on effective strategies to develop employee engagement, suggestions on how to redesign your workplace, and then we'll have a question and answer session immediately following the presentation. Now we'll go to the next slide, and by the way, Andrei, thank you very much for the introduction. So what defines a highly engaged employee? A recent study from Harvard Business Review revealed on an average highly engaged employees are 22% more productive than non-highly engaged employees. So let's look at what differentiates a highly engaged employee in the workplace. Number one, they have a mission that far exceeds clocking into work every day. They take responsibility for their work. They don't feel entitled. They are serious about their work and generally accept employment where they can be successful. They enjoy work that is exciting and challenging. They possess a can-do attitude. They are good problem solvers, and they don't need to be micromanaged. So now I'm going to hand this presentation over to Cristina, who will present the next 3 slides.
Hello, everyone. It's very nice of you to join. Thank you to our other speakers for today's presence and to Andrei for the introduction. We've opened the discussion about engagement and how can we recognize a highly engaged employee. So Sue just gave up some hints about what is different about engaged employees and more into about the new generation, the millennials. We know from various studies that there is a link between engagement levels and performance, the performance of employees. And if we take this idea and we put it in an industry such as sports, this comes even more obvious for us. If we're thinking about the Olympics, the difference between the first and the second place in terms of a sports person is not necessarily in skills or in ability. What makes the difference between the winner and the second place is actually the mindset, is the, if you want, the commitment, is how they manage to build the mindset of high performance of a winner, and how they have the ability to manage their emotions, their state of mind at that moment, their concentration levels. And I think it's similar with what happens in the business. If we want to build the high performance mindset in our organization, which inevitably will lead to higher performance of each and every individual, we have to rely on engagement as well. And I look at engagement as being having the component of the right mindset and the commitment, the emotional commitment and dedication to the work that you're doing, whether you're a sports person or we're talking about the business professional. Knowing that, we're talking about these two common drivers, engagement and performance, and we're looking for some practical tools, what we can do to shape the working environment in order to ensure the right conditions are met to nurture such a culture. We should look into what actually drives engagement and what drives employee performance. In terms of what drives high engagement, the Harvard Business Review published a study in 2013, which I think is still relevant for today, on what is the impact of employee engagement on performance, and strictly related to engagement drivers. As we can see from the graph displayed, is that recognition of high performance has a good impact on stimulating and motivating positively employees. So high performance want to be recognized, rewarded for their hard work. Then what also contributes to engagement is clarity of understanding your role and your contribution to strategy. And in the third position, we see that a driver for engagement is strategy communication, the top-down communication. To sum this up, we can say that in terms of engagement, what is important for people is firstly to be recognized for their efforts. We might be talking about high performance, but I think it works very well on people that do good at their job. Maybe they're not yet at the top, but they're on the right track. And it's about clarity. Then clarity of strategy and clarity of my role within this strategy. In terms of what motivates high performance, we had this finding in our study that we deployed this spring, Employee Performance Management Global Study. And we've indicated that in terms of what motivates people to perform better, the first criteria listed was financial bonuses, then an inspiring manager, then a clear career path. Now this may come a bit intriguing, given that you've probably came across many studies and many opinions from highly skilled professionals that actually exclusively financial bonuses do not get to motivate or gain more engagement for the company. However, when we surveyed our respondents about what matters for you most, they say that they're still looking at financial bonuses. There might be a link between what makes us feel engaged and the extent to which we perform higher at the workplace. And it is, without doubt, a connection and a combination between feeling rewarded, right, what we just we just listed. Like if I want to be rewarded for my performance, how do I see that reward? Where I do see it in terms of monetary payment that I get, and then there's also the component of non-financially, of being appreciated by your colleagues, of this performance being communicated maybe in public. So nevertheless, the recipe for success is a combination between financial recognition and non-financial recognitions, and clarity of what is my role in the strategy and how can I make sure that every day I'm contributing to that strategy. Sue, if you would like to tell us more about how to create an environment that fosters high engagement.
Thank you very much, Christine, and thanks for the great data. Now let's look at how we can create a work environment that fosters high employee engagement. First, we'll look at the 3 action items that I think are the most important, which is communicate, create culture, and define values. Communicate. We need to communicate clearly and concisely about what we expect. And we need to keep in mind that our employees are really what we sell. So if they don't succeed, the company will not succeed. Next, create culture. Sharing your vision and mission is critical for overall corporate success. You need to get employees excited about where you are and where you need to be successful. And give everyone a copy of the corporate roadmap so they're all headed in the same direction. And next, define values. In recent surveys by Deloitte and the Harvard Business Review, millennials have listed fairness, honesty, and ethical business practices as more important than compensation. How their employer conducts business and their image portrayed to the community is very important to that group of employees. The next 3 action items are define, coach, and empower. First, define your expectations by setting clear goals. This reverts right back to effective communication and how important it is that everyone knows what is expected of them. Next, struggling employees and successful employees. You need to coach your employees to success. And don't forget the high performers. They still want constant feedback and to know they are headed in the right direction. Communication and coaching leads to success, and success will lead to empowerment. And last, empowered employees have the knowledge they need to exceed expectations and stretch their goals to the next level. With training and resources necessary to complete those goals, empowered employees can also increase your ROI. And the last 2 action items are motivate and pay. Now, you might think these are the most important things to an employee, and although they are important, they aren't the most important thing. But when you recognize good performance, it provides motivation on the spot. So do it often, then reward them. And make sure to set aside a budget for bonuses and incentives. Having the ability to reward on the spot energizes your teams to perform at a high level day after day. And last but not least, adjust your salaries when warranted. Don't wait for the end of the year to recognize a high performer. They may be working for your competitor by then. So now I'll turn this back to Christina.
Well, I think you get a very good point with make sure you recognize performance in due time before they're not working for someone else.
Exactly.
Indeed, creating the practices or the methods that you can use to create and nurture constantly this culture of engagement and high performance are derived to actually what the workforce is telling us through these surveys, through the feedback that we have in conversations, and we can identify what actually matters for employees. It might be that there are some general motivators, like we've just listed, to have an inspiring manager, to have clarity on your work, even to be financially rewarded. But it might be that in your company you can have some particularities that are specifically important for your team members, for your organization at that moment, which can be considered and integrated in the way this culture is shaped, in the way you create your tools to measure and to manage employee performance overall. It's also a matter of how we manage to configure or refresh or adapt the employee performance management system to support this engagement culture, to support the needs of the business and of the employee in the same time. In the same study that I've mentioned that we've consolidated in spring, we've identified what are the most popular tools used within a performance management system. And as you can see here, we're talking about traditional tools that are usually used, such as the objectives that you set and evaluate, and some performance criteria that can take the form of KPIs depending on the organization or the context. And nevertheless, in the third position, we're talking about competency assessment. These are quite common instruments used in by HR in an organization, and I think they depict quite well a traditional approach to how we do performance management. If I'm looking at the low popularity tool, the least used seem to be the public acknowledgement of employee achievement, which ironically was listed as being an important driver for performance and for engagement. So what we want to do is to make sure that the tools and the practices that we have are aligned to what matters for the employee. And it's not a matter of objectives, KPIs, and competencies being obsolete at this moment in terms of evaluating employees. I think it's more of a matter of how we use these tools and how we make sure that they serve their purposes and they lead to better performance. They're not just a formal checklist that we have to fill in every 6 or 12 months. As we've mentioned before, engagement should be a part of a larger organizational performance management effort. Engagement is not a one-time event, it's more of a process, it's something that you build in time. And not only that you build, you also have to maintain. We looked on what matters for the employees when he's considering the organizational performance management system, or how does the employee look at these appraisals. And for most of them, 42% of them, it seems to be a way to guide their activities based on the objectives and KPIs that we have. So this brings us again to the idea of strategy. If you manage to convey the organizational strategy in a clear and measurable manner for each and every employee, employees might actually use this individual scorecard or the evaluation that they are having at the end of the year as an instrument to guide activities, to take decisions. For the 39% of them, it seems to be a way to get bonuses and promotion. So we see again the aspect of financials. 37 of them say that they look at being a structured process for planning and assessing, so they see it as a positive thing. However, in terms of contribution to professional development and motivation to perform better, we've received some of the lowest scores, which actually should be the entire purpose of this system. We're building the employee performance management system not as a control and sanctioning tool, but we're building it to develop talent, to maintain talent, to motivate to perform better in the future. Well, although it sounds good in theory, in practice it seems to be less effective in this direction. Employee engagement versus customer satisfaction. Employee engagement sounds very good. It might be a topic very attractive for human resources. There might be much enthusiasm about this idea in the human resources area. However, it might sound very fluffy for CEOs when we're talking about justifying investments to raise the employees' engagement. Many CEO or VPs might say that why don't we just give them higher salaries, or what's wrong with their engagement because they're very well paid. But there are some data that supports us in the process of receiving top management support and resources to deploy employee engagement programs, and that because research organizations such as Gallup or even the study that I've mentioned from Harvard Business Review have managed to identify that there is a correlation between the engagement level of the employee and some key indicators for the business. So based on the numbers that we have here, apparently the employees that are in the upper quadrant of engagement level, so employees with high engagement level, have an impact on market share. So they can increase market share with 11%. Companies with high engagement levels among employees have a better revenue growth. They get more business referrals and a good churn rate. It also impacts customer satisfaction, which is very important. It might be that your employees, you might have employees that get to interact directly with clients, and then it comes quite obvious that a nice smile and a nice interaction between the employee and the customer leads to higher satisfaction. But even for those that don't have direct contact with the public, that work in a back office or that work in production, the more engaged they are, the better the quality of the work. The better the quality of the work, the better and more satisfied the customer can be. So I believe that this connection between engagement and the financial aspects or the main KPIs that are of interest for the business is not something to be neglected. And if you want to make your business case for top management, this kind of information can be very helpful. So let's talk more about the ROI of engagement. What is your opinion, Sue, about this matter?
Well, you know, the data that you just presented really leads nicely into this particular slide. I'm going to talk about the ROI of engaged employees and how employers view engagement. In January of 2016, Deloitte published the results of its 2016 Global Human Capital Trends Survey. The results were eye-opening, but really not at all surprising. 7,000 executives from 130 countries had these responses. 85% responded that employee engagement is a priority for this year. 48% responded that engagement continues to be a challenge. 18% reported that their companies do not formally measure employee engagement at all. And I think defining employee engagement and then being able to measure it is probably a little bit tricky, depending on the workplace. 54% reported that they are not fully ready to adopt an always approach. Like, how do we consistently measure something? And 8% of executives responded that they currently do not measure engagement on a monthly or a more frequent basis. And the next slide, this is the steps for corporate success through goal alignment. And I think when employees are aligned with corporate goals, that's where you're going to see increased engagement. Number one, don't hold corporate strategy hostage. Knowledge is power, so share it with everyone. It is empowering. What's decided in the boardroom should not stay in the boardroom. If the critical KPIs for corporate success are not communicated down to those who carry out the mission, your KPIs cannot be achieved. Communicating how the company must perform to stay alive is something everyone must understand. Keeping employees in the dark about corporate objectives means your KPIs never make it out of the boardroom. And according to a recent Gallup poll, only 4 out of 10 employees even know their company's mission. Okay, number 2, create a workplace full of winners. Give them a purpose for showing up to work every day, and they'll surprise you. Number 3, create a strategy map for giving everyone the same directions to success. Nothing creates higher engagement than trying to reach an achievable goal, and I stress the word achievable. You have to visit with your employee and discuss the goal and make sure that you agree that the goal is something that can be achieved in the time frame that it needs to be. Number 4, create clear and concise goals. The more specific the goal, the better chance it will be achieved. Gain buy-in and ownership, and in return you will get accountability. Make sure the objective has a measurable outcome. Ensure resources are available to carry out the task. And number 5, measure the progress often. Keep communication flowing both ways. Consistent feedback ensures that everyone stays true to the target. Celebrate the wins in real time. Don't wait to recognize great performance. Okay, and I will turn. Yes?
I will take the opportunity to just talk a bit more about the idea of alignment between, because here at the KPI Institute we are quite fond of with the KPIs. And building on your first point with don't keep your strategy in the boardroom, that's very, very important. And however it might sound quite easy to do, let's just cascade strategy, right? That's the answer. We don't keep it there, we cascade it down, we communicate strategy. In terms of a practical approach, it is a bit more complicated. There are various challenges and obstacles that you might find when once you have established organizational scorecard, which should reflect on your strategy, and I'm referring here to clear objectives, KPIs, associated targets that you have set, and action plans like projects. You need to be able to convert that strategy into meaningful scorecards for each department so that it can go one step further to being clarified for each individual. And some of the challenges that occur in this process might relate to the fact that many of the processes within the organization or the programs, the large projects we try to deliver are the output of contribution that comes from various departments or various business units. So sometimes it might be very hard to identify where does the contribution of one department in the process stops and the other one starts. To have this in more clear terms, it's usually recommended to bring the right people at the table, the key stakeholders, internal stakeholders, and discuss very well about what makes sense for their department, what would be more meaningful for the other department. And once strategy is clear for the department, we can move one level further and make it clear for the individual. But if processes, if strategy and targets are not clear for the department, it's going to be a lot more difficult to cascade it down to employee. And when it comes to employees, we need to make sure that the objectives, the KPIs and targets we associate to them are actually in their power of influence. I cannot associate an objective to a person that doesn't have the power to decide upon that. I cannot make accountable for someone on a cost matter if he is not the decision maker in that process. These are some of the aspects that must be very carefully analyzed in order not to create confusions or misleading objectives or irrelevant scorecards for the individuals. Again, what helps here is to involve the right people, to involve the individual, the employee, in building its own scorecard. He can bring sometimes more clarity upon the process. He can tell what actually works in that process and what can be improved. He the sense of higher accountability when he's actually actively participating in the creation of its scorecard, and it's not just a document that his boss or the boss of his boss has decided is relevant for him and it's been submitted through an email. Active engagement of the employee in developing the employee performance management system, it's a win-win situation. It's win for the company because you create a relevant instrument for measuring and evaluating employee performance. Is a win for the employee because he gets to feel committed and inspired to reach those targets as it was part of his professional development. He was involved in the process each and every step of the way. The cascading of the strategy should ensure that the objectives and KPIs are so specific in the way that the employee can actually see the value that I bring to the organization. Now I can actually understand very clearly what is my role to support this organization and how is that role quantified. And nevertheless, once you understand what is your role and how can you contribute, and you start contributing, you get the sense of fulfillment, the sense of engagement that can grow if maintained and nurtured by the organization through, of course, other methods as well. Some tips for effective strategies to employee engagement. Now, Sue mentioned some of them as well, and there are many projects or many programs you can implement. Some of them might require some investment, financial investment and budgeting. Others might just be a matter of culture, such as giving effective feedback. The strategies that I'm proposing for you is to make engagement, and experience a priority of state of the work environment. It's like if you want to start in a project, you should start with the end in mind. You want to know how this engagement looks like. And employee experience or employee engagement is a priority that it's for everyone. I need to make sure that my colleague feels engaged today, not because I'm his manager, just because he's my colleague, and then supervisor managers should make sure that the teams they're coordinating the best employee experience. And I think that an example in this direction can come from Mark Levy, who is head of employee experience at Airbnb. And they are very focused on bringing their mission and vision to life, to make it actually real, and to guide the way they relate with their employees, the way they recruit, the way they take decisions, the way we offer to volunteer in different experiences, the way they do CSR. A different example of effective strategy would be to lead by example. You said it is said that a negative state of mind is contagious, but a positive is contagious as well. So if we are engaged, there are chances that some of the people around us might have higher engagement levels than in teams where there's more of a negative vibe. Jeff Weiner, the CEO of LinkedIn, says that every day I come to work, I'm primarily guided by two things. Firstly, realizing our mission and vision, and secondly, I focus how to make our culture and value come to life. So here we see the same example of making culture come to life, make it something real, not just some text we have written on our website or in our strategy. Employee empowerment, that's also strongly impacting engagement. I cannot feel engaged if I don't have the liberty to express my thoughts, if I don't have the liberty to practice my professional skills and to take decisions to some extent. Ricardo Semler from Semcom of the Workplace Innovators was mentioning in a Talk Tech about his leaders who maintain positions in the companies which are validated by employees. And another good practice here about empowerment is that employees are actually asked to contribute to the establishment of their salary. So they have to propose their salary based on salaries in the company and industry average, which I think that's quite a strong argument for making them feel committed towards targets and make them feel fairly rewarded. We should encourage innovation and professional development of people. We can encourage innovation by deploying certain events that are dedicated to solving a problem, or some in the company incubators to create solutions for different products that we would like to upgrade or for our services. Employees, given the chance, have the opportunity to save and create a lot of cost efficiency if just asked. So sometimes we just have to provide the right environment in which they can express their ideas, in which they can take the time to be creative and think about what can be done better in the organization. And the last one would be to implement a feedback culture. Now, feedback is quite a common word. I think it's highly used in organizations, but it's not necessarily very well practiced or practiced at all. Apparently, a new survey made by Interact in the US, on the US market, identified the fact that 69% of managers claimed to feel uncomfortable when communicating with employees. Just communicating, so not giving feedback. And then 37% of them said that they're uncomfortable when they have to give direct feedback to their employees on their performance because they have the sense that the employee might respond negatively to feedback. This indicates that although we like to talk about a lot about feedback, in practice people are not comfortable with giving feedback. And it also might be an option that we need to learn how to give effective feedback, and we need to learn how to receive feedback. So this might be a challenge for many organizations to build this feedback culture in the organization, so so that both sides, the one that offers, the one that receives feedback, are comfortable and are seeing as a way to improve and as a really added value element in the way we interact with each other. So with this, I'm going to close the presentation that we made regarding engagement, regarding what drives engagement and how we can ensure that we build this culture within the organization. But in a word of when we're driven by technology, it would be very hard to imagine that we can do it all without relying on some very useful tools. We want our employees to be engaged, then we need to have right instruments, the right platform for communication as well. So to discuss more about the right platform, I'm going to hand it over to Mark Stewart, who is here to introduce us into the KPI Soft features and gain more insights about the tools that can make our life easier as HRs, as managers who evaluate employees, and also as employees that have the chance to actually get feedback and be in touch with real data on their performance. Mark, I'm going to make you the presenter for this so that we can see your screen and you take us into this journey of the demo.
Thank you very much for that introduction, and thank you all for joining us today. We learned a lot about employee engagement and the importance of turning that really into measurable results. And that's really what KPI Soft has been doing for many years, especially with the KPI Institute's help. So let me go right into how we handle this. The ideal situation is your managers are looking at the data, they're trying to extract what's most important and communicate that to the employee. So what our software does is the same thing. It automatically takes the specific KPIs that are most important to you and communicates it directly to a phone, to your email, directly to the employee to help boost his performance. I really want to show you how we do it. So we can do it on any device, computer, tablet, a phone, whichever your employees prefer to get the data. But it looks similar like this. It looks like any social media site, Facebook, LinkedIn. So what it's going to do is give them things they need to know. So when they open up the application, they click on things I need to know, it's going to tell them only the most important things they need to know that day to be successful. So for example, here on the left side, we're just going to show the trends. Let's say this is a sales example. We're going to show the sales month over month and how it's performing. And on the right side, we're going to see how we're ranked. We're going to see Martha, she's ranked there 4th. So then very quickly, Martha's going to be able to know, what do I need to do to be successful and how is the entire organization doing right now? So again, all this information needs to be at the employee's fingertips, so they know where they're at and what they need to accomplish for the entire company. The second part is things I need to do. There's so many tasks, there's so many emails, there's so much paperwork. At the end of the day, people want to know, what do I need to do today to be successful? And so when they click on this, they're going to see, all right, as a manager, I see I need to motivate someone today here on the left side. So when I click on it, I go to the representative and say, they're not performing at their goal, you need to help them. Or a second example, you need to congratulate someone. Someone just made a big sale, you need to recognize them right now so they know that we appreciate what they're doing. So all this really helps managers, employees, even top-level executives stay on task. Now, one thing we mentioned here on the right, it really matters about making clear target objectives. Because right here is an example we had from another client. The red line is the target, what we're telling our sales reps to do. And the blue line is representing their activity. So as you see, as our target increased, their activity dropped dramatically. So right now, what this is telling me is that our target is too high because our reps believe they can't achieve it. So again, we get this information in real time versus waiting for the end of the quarter, end of the month to find out all the lost revenue we've made. We can be able to change things right now and make good strategic decisions. Now, all this is built around a scorecard. Now, the KPI Institute does a fantastic job of being able to really analyze what needs to be in a scorecard, but this is just a general example. So Justin is the manager, and we cascade that down to Tiffany, who's the sales rep. And Tiffany anytime can be able to go in here and see her sales, her productivity, what products she's selling, and her retention. Now, ideally, the situation right now is Tiffany has to go to a closed door conversation with Justin to talk about the few items in here that she's not performing well. Like she doesn't have a good opportunity funnel. She's doing fine with meetings, but she's doing really bad with retention in Atlanta. So that's all Justin really has time for, to tell Tiffany is where she's failing. But what our system is designed for is to show where she's succeeding. You know, Tiffany, you're doing great in sales. You have a great pipeline. You're selling great in Chicago. We really appreciate what you're doing. And then we give her tips about how to really fill in these gaps. So it does what Justin can do, positive reinforcement and helping her coach where she needs to be coached with every employee all the time. And so that's really what changes the game when you're talking about performance. So the next thing is we take that information and again deliver it right to the phone. So here Anthony just booked 7 appointments, and in sales that's great, but a manager would never know or care about how many appointments Anthony made. He only cares about how many sales came in. But our system recognizes, Anthony, you're doing a great job. I appreciate what you're doing. And then the second line here we say, why don't you connect with Tiffany to be able to help you close more appointments? So not only do we say what the positive thing is, we helped coach him to do better. And that's just a small part about what we do. And really, especially with HR, we make this so easy to use. Some of our competitors are very complicated. It's multiple steps. And this, we set it all up for you. The KPI Institute can be to help you with KPIs. And we organize your entire company so it's seamless. So right here, I'm going to show you just a very simple employee dashboard. So this, anytime HR or manager can go in and be able to see the trend lines with how people are meeting their goals and cascade every employee with how they're doing on their KPIs from top to bottom. So again, within a few seconds, you see how your entire team is doing, and our executives and HR team love this. And the next thing is, how do you create a KPI? So we design all your initial KPIs, put it all in the system for you, but let's say you want to set a new one. So this is Eugen. Eugen, of course, is the manager. You can decide here on the left side to take a KPI from a supervisor or create your own KPI. And as you do that, it goes into a very simple system. What I need to do as the representative is decide, do I own this KPI? Do I share this KPI, or do I support this KPI? And what is the weightage? Let's say this is 25% of my goal. What is this KPI named? What is the target? Do you want it in dollar amounts, percentages, numbers? And how often do I want to be ranked? Daily, weekly, monthly? And then down here I put in what is poor performance, what is my goal, what is good performance, and what is just excellent performance, because you really want to tell people you're doing excellent, you're overachieving, and we notice it and we appreciate it. That's really what's going to set you apart from your competitors. And last, let's say you don't want automation, you don't want it to be automatically sent in from any other software, CRM, or anything of that nature. We can design just a custom form that you can put any kind of text you like, any kind of targets. Your employees can be able to put them in manually, and your managers can even put in a comment, whatever you like. And then again, if you have any questions or new employees, they just click one button. It describes what the KPI is in detail, where they specifically need to be, and where they're at. And here, the supervisor put a comment, Sue, you're doing a great job. So again, this is very easy and intuitive to use. And a couple of features I wanted to tell you very quickly, because I know we're short on time. We have a great 360 feedback tool. So let's say, for example, here, Sally. Sally's been underperforming for months, and we really want to know why. So we're going to ask her, all of her juniors, her peers, to be able to give just simple feedback on Sally. And the ultimate goal is not just to find out what's wrong, but find out how we can help her. Because right now what a manager has to do is talk to Sally and say, Sally, what's wrong? What our goal is with the software is to find out what's wrong before the manager has the conversation. And so they're just very simple questions. How are they on the phone? How are they with customers? Anything that's specific to their job that doesn't require the employees to put in text so they go on to other subjects that aren't important. We just want to know what specifically is she strong at and what is she weak at. So then when I have the conversation with her, I know what to target to specifically help her the most. And our ultimate goal is we want every employee to be successful at their job. And that's what this does very quickly. And last, we have coaching templates. Obviously, in HR, this is very helpful. You want to talk to them about their progress. What is the specific problem? Why are we having this conversation? And what is the plan to turn this around? And any comments that the manager would like to do. So this, of course, if it's all put in one system, in one place where everyone can see it, and it's tied to their specific KPI and goals, that's the only way this can be successful. Every competitor out there will be able to put in text, but what we do is we take that text and turn it into knowledge for you. And that's really where we come into our customized dashboards. Now, in HR, of course, everything I just showed you is what you wanted. To show your CEOs and the executive team, they want to be able to pull all data from different sources and pull them to one place so they can know what's going on in the entire organization. And we have a great success rate of doing this. What we do is we basically design widgets. Each widget is going to have a specific goal in mind, pulling from a server or a CRM or an HRIS system. And again, we're going to tell you what's most important to you. Now, this example is for university. Universities are very interested in tracking their success, not just internally, but be able to show the state and government what is going on with the university and their success. So here on the top right, I have total enrollment, and then you can see the numbers, research, student receivables. But again, what we design in this dashboard is be able to see all your important information on one page and have it easily to understand. So let's say I want to understand a little bit more about total enrollment or research. All I do is click on it, and it's a drop down to all the different departments and schools. So arts and sciences, school of music. So you can see very quickly what's going on in the entire university or in your business. And this is an example about what the dashboard can look like. It's all your numbers designed to tell a story. So we give you the numbers, and again, we put it in a graph or a chart to best show you what we can do. So again, your CEO looks at this, it's a beautiful report, and it tells him a story that no one has to explain to him what's going on. And that is the end of my demonstration. And I'm going to pass it back to our team. Right now. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you all very much for your presentation. And now let's get on with our Q&A session. The first question that we've received, which is open to anyone, is the following. On the account of global oil prices creating a new sort of recession nowadays, financial bonuses trends are getting lower on average. And what would be your opinions on this point?
Well, this is true. And from an HR perspective, I mean, the last 12 years have been very hard for all the businesses, I would say, around the world. We've had some pretty striking economic downturns. where employers weren't able to give the bonuses that they'd like to give or able to give the raises they would like to give. Don't forget those little things that keep people coming in your door every day. Number one, like we talked about, make sure you involve your employees in what's going on. If we can't do bonuses, try to share the bad about the company and the good about the company. What's happening? Make sure you say thank you and say it often. Make sure you recognize people, maybe to their peers and to managers. Even if you come up with a little recognition or a award, little certification that you come up for with your employees, the little things still matter, and sometimes they matter more than even the bonuses. So those are just some ideas on how you might be able to make it through this little trying period with the oil industry right now.
I totally agree with what you said, that those little things actually do matter and might matter more than a raise or an addition to your bonus. And if we're thinking about engagement, actually engagement as a term is defined as the discretionary effort, so the additional effort that you're willing to put in your work that is not driven by the fact that you're being paid more. It's not given by the fact that you get some sort of financial benefit out of it. It's a discretionary effort you're willing to do because you have this feeling of belonging towards the belonging within the company, and you have the feeling of sharing towards the company's mission and vision. So you want to contribute to that mission. You find yourself having a contribution to a more extensive purpose, and you want to be a part of it. So in this context, indeed, in difficult financial times, bonuses or even training budgets are heavily affected. But it does matter the fact that you've managed to create a culture of engagement and performance among people, because this is what's going to keep them united and working more effectively, even so that we're talking about doing more with less resources. It's going to keep them close to the organization, and they might not leave just for a smaller amount of money or that they might be receiving at a competitor. They might remain with the company just because they're engaged, just because they have this strong sense of fitting and sharing the same vision as the organization.
I think this is a definite problem that's facing a lot of my clients today. Not just oil and gas prices, but just times in general. And usually what is ended up happening is managers are asked to do a lot more than they ever were before because of budgeting. So what's happening is this problem is really doubling, and I would say tripling, because the employee feels like they're undervalued. The employee feels like the manager doesn't pay attention to them. And the reason is the manager is stretched too thin. And so really being able to invest in engagement, to be able to help your managers be able to encourage employees and talk to them and coach them is going to dramatically change your organization. If you want to save money, it's not making your managers do more, it's being able to help your managers be more effective.
Thank you very much for your answers. And now the second question would be, again, I believe open to everyone. How can we establish objectives that are linked to the company strategy for financial and HR administrative individuals?
Well, this is Sue, and I'll take that one on. Others can as well. And I'm thinking maybe that you're talking about confidential information that you don't want to get out. You know, you would when you roll down KPIs to goals and create scorecards for different individuals, you of course need to make sure that you're rolling down those particular KPIs to the right person. If you're going to talk to someone or give a goal to someone that has financial data, maybe you're going to do a reduction in force. And of course you don't want other people to know, maybe not even other people on the human resources team. You will have that confidential person within your HR department that will be responsible for still carrying out those activities without letting everyone know. And that will be part of the goal itself. And I think the same thing is with the finance department. Things that may negatively affect the finance department at this time, and it needs to be changed, something needs to be curbed, a change management comes into place, and definitely you'll have to have someone at a level of responsibility that can take that on and work through that goal without creating any kind of fear and fear of the unknown, mainly for the people that are working for you. So you just have to be very careful how you handle it. These things happen in business. We're changing courses all the time. It's the nature of business. There's ebbs and there's flows. So you definitely have to have other people in the organization help you carry those things out.
And taking the discussion a bit in a different area than what Sue was mentioning with confidentiality and handling sensitive matters, on a more practical or how-to approach, how to define measurable results for a person that works in the finance department or for HR, and to align them to what the strategy, with our organizational strategy, it depends very much on the position of the person. If we're talking about a manager, then he might take over in his responsibility some of the financial targets that are associated for the organization. So the chief financial officer will be responsible for a revenue target, for a cash flow target, and so on. If we're talking about how this gets to be translated at more at lower organizational levels for an accountant, for example, or for a simple recruiter, I think that here you should look a bit on what are the objectives of the company, and also how do you correlate them with the key processes in the organization. So here you have to take a more operational approach and look at what are the key processes and how we can make these processes more effective. Is it about the time it takes for a recruiter to bring in a new person, time to recruit as a KPI, or is it about for an accountant related to the errors that he does in the data processing, financial data inputs in the system? So depending on on where you are in the organizational chart, where we're talking about management position, which the connection to strategy is much more easily to make, much more clear, or we're talking about lower hierarchical levels, where things get more operational, what is important is to identify what is key for that role and how can that be measured. It might be the case that in some situations you just don't have the right collection method for a certain KPI, for a certain result you would like to quantify, but there are, however, cases in which you can find at least 2 or 3 KPIs that make sense for that role, and that can act as some guiding principles in how am I as an employee contributing to the organization, and what is important in my role? Where should I pay most of attention?
All right. Thank you very much again for your answers. And now another question, whoever wishes to take this one. What is the difference between competencies and behavior assessment?
Well, this is Sue. I'll start out with when you in our system, for example, in the KPI Soft system, competencies are those things that you can measure that are attached to a goal. How competent is that person at carrying out the task or carrying out the goals that need to be done? Behaviors are those other things that are more like how does the person interact with the customer? Is the person sharing with the team members? Do they make sure that all the information for their team gets translated down to everybody so everyone is informed? It's those other things that are very difficult to measure but are very important when you're talking about keeping a strong team and keeping everyone aligned. We happen to carry out the 360-degree competency role by asking peers, asking managers, maybe even asking outside vendors that deal with some of the staff, or customers even. how is our person doing in those key behavioral areas? And each company will decide what those key behavioral areas are.
Indeed, when we're talking about competencies, I think we're referring to what that person knows to do, what he's actually able to do as a task, to be able to deploy the task. But you're also interested not how good he is as a professional, but also how he interacts with stakeholders, internal or external. You can have a very good professional in your organization, but he might be having really serious troubles in collaborating or in discussing with other people. So he might be very skillful, but in the same time, you would like to send this message, if you want, to your employees, that the purpose is not just to reach the targets we have set for you, but it's also important how you do it. And I look at behaviors as being this: how you do it, how you discuss with people, how do you treat customers, how do you treat other colleagues within the team. But in terms of assessment, I think that's a choice that organizations sometimes make. You can have a system in which you distinguish you differentiate between this is a competencies and then this is a behavior. Take, for example, teamwork. In many cases, we refer to it as being a competency, that you know how to work in a team, but you can look at it as being a behavior, well, whether you're open to collaboration and discussion. So you can have the system where you differentiate very clearly what's a competency, what's a behavior, and you assess them differently, or you can have your competencies explained and assessed by analyzing different behaviors. Well, nevertheless, I think both of them can work well within an organization. You just have to decide, at least within the company, how you're using these terms and how do you manage to differentiate between them, so that is clear for everyone.
Okay, and now on to the last question, as we are pressed by time. Can an employee create and set his own KPIs, or would this rather be done by his manager? Or how, or based on his manager's suggestions?
Well, this is Sue, and I think it could be either way, depending on how your company wants to create that process. Do they want the employees to create their own KPIs? If that's the case, then the employee needs to be very well informed about what the corporate's KPIs are for the year, because key performance indicators are just that. That's what do we need to do to get us to where we need to be. You know, what are the performance items that take us there? So there would have to be an awful lot of involvement with the employee and what goes on, like I say, in the boardroom when you're doing strategic planning, for them to be able to set their own KPIs. I think what's very nice is when the upper management shares their KPIs, at that point it gives employees the ability to start thinking about, how could I help with that? What could I do? And I don't think it's wrong at all to involve your employees in thinking about the KPIs, that where is my talent? What can I do to make this happen for our company? And as long as it's agreed upon between the manager and their employee, I think it's fine to let them be part of that KPI setting process. In fact, it's probably going to create a lot of buy-in and be very motivating.
I also support your perspective on things, Sue, to involve people in creating their own KPIs, they're setting the targets even. However, it has to be very clear for them that it has to be a consensus, so they don't have necessarily the final decision upon those KPIs or those targets. It's going to be agreed between what the organization needs to reach in terms of targets and long-term perspective, what they can do at the moment, what manager thinks is suitable as an approach. So as long as these terms are clear, I think it can only add value if we involve them. However, we have to find out a format of involving them that is effective for everyone and doesn't make the process a bit more burdensome or too time-consuming.
Well, that brings us to the end of the Q&A session, but have no fear, you will receive answers to your questions via email as soon as possible from our presenters. Now I would like to invite them to offer a few last words to our listeners.
Well, since I've been going first, I'll continue. This is Sue. I would just like to say, you know, by keeping your employees informed and involved, and that communication piece, it's on every page of everything we present because it's so important. You will be able to start seeing increased engagement and increased company success. And it's never too late to start a best practice, and it's never too late to increase your ROI. So my advice is to start today and go from there. You can only get better. Thank you.
This is Christina, and my takeaway for you for today would be to look at engagement not like our new project with a start and end date. Look at it as a process. Look at it as a long-term investment. And talking about the ROI Sue mentioned, it might not happen that you can see significant improvement in a few months or in 1 year time, but improvements will be spotted and will be eventually quantified in those financials even that I've mentioned that impact the business in a positive way. So think about engagement as a continuous process. Think about it as a way to embed it into the organizational culture. And if you're doing change management now to introduce these new ideas, make sure that they become the routine, make sure that they become common practices in the way you work.
Excellent. And this is Mark Stewart. Thank you again, everyone, for your time. My last remarks are really when you're looking at these kind of data sources. Right now, it seems like a lot of my clients are just throwing data at employees, throwing data at the leadership team. The big difference between what we do and just giving people data about their performance is we turn that data into knowledge. We tell a story with the software. So not only are they seeing their performance, but we're giving them insight to how to perform better or that they're doing very well and helping that engagement piece. So it's really kind of changing the game from where just here's how you're doing to here's how much we appreciate what you're doing and here's specifically what you can do to help increase your performance and do more for the company. Thank you.
Thank you to all three of you for this wonderful presentation. The KPI Institute appreciates your interest in the webinar Employee Engagement, the Key to Driving Performance. The KPI Institute and KPI Soft are at the forefront of performance management. Together, they represent the yin and yang of this practice domain, complementing KPI education with KPI technology, dedicated to customers around the world to ensure that performance is within everybody's reach. Follow our websites and our social media channels to find out more details on our certification courses and software solutions tailored towards organizations or individuals committed to performance excellence, and to subscribe to our next webinar, Excellence Models and Criteria, which will be held on the 21st of September. Also, if you are interested in getting a certification granted by the KPI Institute on vital areas within the performance management discipline, you can explore our scheduled courses on store.kpiinstitute.org. Furthermore, if you are interested in obtaining the latest and most innovative software tools and instruments in performance management today, head over to kpisoft.com and start powering up your business. Thank you again for your participation and have a nice day.